Hi, and welcome to 15 Minutes of Consulting Best Practices. I'm David A. Fields, and I am joined by my colleague, Carol Williams. Good morning, Carol. I say that every time. Good afternoon, Carol.
Good afternoon, David.
And the format here is simple, even simpler than getting your mornings and afternoons correct. You ask questions, and we'll give you answers. Hopefully that help you enjoy a rewarding, lucrative, successful consulting practice. I know it's summer, and some of y'all are some folks who are normally here on vacation, but let us know if you're here. Type it in the comments. Michael, good morning, and Tom, and oh, you've got a question. We'll get to that almost immediately. I think we had one submitted that we need to get to, and then we'll get to your question, Tom. And so, yeah, do what Tom did. Type questions in the chat. And so while those are coming up, I know that there was one submitted. Deidre, since you're on vacation, we have Deidre back. Deidre, will you put that question up? And I'll read it, Carol, because you have the right expertise to answer this. From Frank. Frank said, my firm has followed your process with a prospect and it's worked amazingly well. They agreed to our proposal, but now their third-party vendor management advisor said we can move forward with a 2-year deal if we reduce fees by 18%. And I offered some alternatives. The advisor said he would deliver the message, but I haven't heard back. So the question is, how do you close an engagement when vendor management inserts themselves to negotiate pricing? And I saw this come in. I thought, Carol, you're the good thing we have you on the team since you have so much experience in vendor management and with this. So what's the answer? How do you deal with these vendor management people?
Well, first of all, I want to say kudos on following the process for context and proposal, because that's why it worked well to get the client to agree. Kudos. Now, the challenge, you're so right that the client has agreed to your proposal and your pricing. So now having this third party advisor coming in, they have various motives here. So I think part of that is in your situation is to understand what is their motive and why are they coming back to you. Sometimes they get a little extra bonus if they can negotiate better fees for their client. Other times they are tasked with making sure that the contract is the best option for the client. Also, they may have 2 different contracts, 2 different vendors that they are negotiating against each other, and they're going back and forth, and maybe the client doesn't realize this, but the vendor management advisor does, right? So there's lots of different things going on behind the scenes that's really important to know. So I would say your first step is to go back to that advisor and ask them what's going on, and just ask for an update on the entire situation.
Can you tell Carol, us where Carol, well, do you go back to, or because you said go back to the advisor, do you go back to your client or do you go back to the vendor management person?
Both.
Okay.
Because you want to understand, and it is not wrong for you to go back to your client and say, so your advisor reached out to us and said this. We're trying to understand what's going on because we weren't aware that this was that this was going to happen. So we're just trying to understand what is their role in this whole process, as well as they asked us this piece. Now, we would love to work with you for 2 years. That would be fantastic. But we're trying to understand the whole ask behind it.
Right.
But if the third party advisor has a say in who wins the contract, you don't want to get on their bad side either. So you don't want to do an in run around them and totally undercut and undermine your progress. So staying in touch with that advisor is also going to be really important, because they also have a say typically in contract language and in security and making recommendations to the business on making the decision. So staying in touch with both is going to be really important. David, what do you think? Is there anything else that you can think to add?
Other than just generally disliking it when these vendor management people get involved. And you actually have more experience with them than I do, though we've dealt with it with a lot of clients. What I think, what you said, first of all, knowing what their objectives are and how they're paid is really important. We had a client, one of our Canadian clients, we had the whole thing, just as Frank described. It was all solved. We already had gone through negotiations with the client, their end client. And then vendor management got involved. And when we asked, like, okay, so what are your objectives? What do you need? The vendor management's response was, we just need any savings. And our client, the consulting firm, said, can we give you 1%? And they're like, yeah, sure. And so, a 7-figure contract was sealed because we gave a 1% discount. So sometimes I think you just need to know how they're paid and how they're rewarded, and is it a percent of the deal? I'm also a fan of making these kinds of problems your client's problem, and going back and saying, look, we're ready to move forward, and this is a big project for you. Can you please sort this out with your vendor management?
Yeah.
So, all right, cool. Let us know whether any thoughts on that, any questions, any different ideas. Please put it in the chat. Bruce, you wrote first meeting. I don't know if there's a question in there, or you're just saying this is your first time with us, in which case, welcome. And I see you've got let's say, consult with my own firm. I never race to the bottom. How long can you go? Is it bad business practice? I just walk away. All right. Yeah. Or how low can you go? Right. Got it. Totally agree with that. All right. Tom asked, can you please comment on LinkedIn Sales Navigator as a search tool for clients? I paid for a subscription, but did not find it to be terribly effective. Many people responded to connection requests, but few respond to requests for conversations. So I'll jump on that. So understand what LinkedIn is and what it can be used for and what it's good for. LinkedIn is a very good way to surface potential targets. LinkedIn primarily as a job search tool is my understanding. And if you talk to the LinkedIn people, and I know someone at LinkedIn in the executive suite at LinkedIn, to a large extent, it's viewed as a professional search if you need a job or if you're thinking about moving on. But for us, it is a way to identify potential prospects. It is not in itself a way to get into conversation. Now, I'm going to do a teaser. Fortunately, there is a way to use LinkedIn effectively to get into conversation. It's just a couple of steps. And the teaser is, we actually have a program absolutely dedicated to this, not LinkedIn per se, but how do you create conversation? How do you get your pipeline, which starts with conversations, sort of juiced up? And we're in the final stages of pulling that together, and hopefully you'll get to see that in a matter of weeks. So hold on to that. But yes, you can use LinkedIn. It can be helpful. And LinkedIn Sales Navigator itself, if you're going to search aggressively and to identify prospects, yeah, it can be helpful. It's not the be all end all. Okay. Do you want to read Brad's? Do you have something to add to that, Carol? You're muted, Carol. So,
am I muted?
Nope, not now.
Okay. So, yes, I wanted to add this, that also when you reach out to them with the connection request, it's important to just explain, how and why you're reaching out to them. Don't just send the templated, I'd like to connect with you on LinkedIn. Having a personalized connection request, one, is really important. And two, making sure you're right side up in that connection request.
Right.
Not, I'd like to talk to you about potentially working together. It's not going to get you a good response.
Right.
They may connect with you because they just accept, but it's not going to move you forward.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. Nor are you going to go right in and ask them to have a conversation, because as you have discovered, that won't work.
Right.
All right. And Brad, you said it can be helpful to show you're already discounted if that was already done with your initial negotiations, or communicate you are already implicitly provided a discount from your standard rack rate. Yes. Agree. I have mixed feelings on that. I prefer to tell clients we don't discount, which I think is a stronger position, because once you're discounting, then it's a matter of how much. In the case of our client up in Canada where we did this and it was 1%, it's like, yeah, okay, whatever. And there are times you have to give a 10% or something, and you just let them know. You let your own client know, I'm going to raise this 10% so that I can give your folks, your vendor management group, the credit for getting a 10% discount. But I would be clear on that, so that you're saying you're not actually getting a discount.
Yeah.
Do you agree, Carol, or you disagree with that?
No, completely agree about don't discounting, because you're also setting a precedent. Once you discount, you can never go back up. It becomes very, very difficult, and you're setting that expectation.
Yeah. And then it's just like, oh, we want a little bit more discount.
Mhm.
Easier just to say we don't discount. It's all built in.
Yep.
The fees are fair. You're getting an amazing return. All right. If then some of that doesn't make sense, or you disagree, or have a different point of view, Bruce, appreciate you putting your point of view in here, and Brad also. So that is excellent. And other questions, put them in there. I don't know. Deidre, were there other questions in the already that people submitted that we need to get to? Oh,
Okay, so Wendy has asked a question of, how do I squeeze more when in a long-term retainer? Well, David, there's many ways that you can.
how do I squeeze more when I'm in a long-term retainer? Not sure exactly how to sort of parse that one. I give it a shot. I can think of at least a few ways. Wendy, you might mean that. And if you're here, let us know exactly what you meant. So one might be, how do I squeeze more? How do we get more work outside the retainer from the same client if I'm already in this agreement? So that is pretty straightforward. We would suggest you do what's called an opportunity assessment, because you are in a long-term retainer and you get to see a lot of opportunities, a lot of gaps inside your client. You can ask for a conversation, a meeting in which you present an opportunity assessment and say, look, we've been working on all these things. Here's some big opportunities that we might be able to work together on, or you might be able to tackle. Some of them I can't help with, and that will advance your cause. They're not inside our current relationship because these are our projects, but that could be an opportunity for you. Okay, so that's one. How do I squeeze more? Maybe you're just asking for a fee increase. That would be, I guess, another interpretation of your question. Wendy, I'm really hoping you're here and you fill us in. So if you're in a retainer, we don't use the word retainer, but that's okay. I know what you mean. You're sort of this long-term advisory contract, then how would you get higher fees? At the next renewal period. You can't do it before then. You can't do it in the middle. But at the next renewal period, or just before then, when you're discussing, all right, let's talk about the next year together or the next quarter together, we need to discuss fees a little bit, because fees have gone up a little bit. So that would be that. I suppose another interpretation would be just how do you squeeze more value out of it for the client? So how do you create more during a long engagement? And I think one thing you should always do in any long-term advisory engagement is consistently ask your client whether they are receiving value and what will be of value now and going forward. I know that we end every one of our conversations with clients by asking that question. Was this of value? Did this help? And we start every conversation by asking what will be of the most value and what will be most helpful. And so having that as part of your standard operating procedure will get you in the right direction. So that's my thoughts on there. And Bruce, your ideas on rates, which is great. I know we're coming up on the end of our 15 minutes. Carol, did I miss anything, or did I miss the obvious on that one?
No, totally hit on the 3 different ways to interpret. On the second one, I would just add, if you're going back and renegotiating, making sure that any new contract language gives you an opportunity to be able to come back again, say in a year, because expenses go up, cost of business goes up, you can always add more value. So make sure that it's not just a perpetual conversation that you're having, where you're always the one having to come up with that conversation. And instead, it's time to renew the contract. Let's talk.
Perfect. All right. And look at that. Burned through 15 minutes with really interesting questions. Thank you all for coming. If you're not connected with us, thank you, Deidre, right there. If you're not connected with me or you're not connected with Carol, please connect with us on LinkedIn. So those are the links. Thank you for putting that up there, Deidre. And also, if you don't get our articles, make sure you subscribe so you receive the articles weekly, but also their announcements. Like I just told you, we're going to have this new offering. You'll find out about that, and you'll only find out about that if you subscribe, because we're not opening it to the general public. And let's see. And by the way, if this is your first time, like Bruce, I think you may have mentioned this is your first time, put that on your calendar. Every Monday, put Monday Live, davidaffields.com Monday Live, and that way you get to join us and ask smart questions and contribute your great thoughts. And that's it. Thank you so much for joining us. Have an amazing week. Remember, as always, consulting is about them. You're about your clients and prospects, not about you. So give them value and give them kindness. And we will see you next Monday. Take care, all.
Bye.